dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back for our final segment on Liberty Nation Radio this week, discussing Ukraine, Russia, and America's involvement in ending the war. And we've continued our conversation with Liberty Nation national security correspondent, Mr. Dave Patterson. Thanks for sticking around so long, Dave. I want to take this down a slightly darker turn. So we've been talking thus far about what each side wants out of a peace arrangement, what the phases of those peace arrangements might be, which you've written about very extensively on the pages of libertynation.com. I do recommend everyone goes and reads that, reads your coverage there. But I want to talk about what happens if there isn't a peaceful negotiation. Now, it seems to me, and this really just the first kicking off point, is there's got to be a point when President Trump would wash his hands of the whole affair and say, this isn't an American problem. What do you think it would take to get to that point?
Well, I think it would be just an overt intransigence on Putin's part to discuss anything. You know, it's my way or the highway, and you guys, I don't care what you say, this is how it's going to be, because we're big and bad, and we're tearing your land to pieces, and we can continue to do this for a very long time. I think that if it became clear that Putin has no interest in the peace negotiations, I think that the first thing, remember that Europe also has threatened the secondary tariffs and sanctions, and to levy much more stringent trade. I'm not entirely clear that we've exploited all of the banking options against Russia that could be imposed. So I think that
sorry, Dave. Sorry to interrupt. Just on that note, I suspect I don't have the figures in front of me, but I suspect that since the start of this war, that Europe as a whole has probably bought the equivalent cost in energy from Russia, energy resources from Russia, that might actually be a higher number than the amount that they sent to Ukraine in terms of weaponry and aid. And so you're right, there is a whole secondary level that could happen if they can get supplies from elsewhere.
And they can. And that's that's the point. And actually, if the United States really put its mind to it, they probably could get it less expensively.
Yeah, it would involve some pipelines being watched by being watched for underwater vessels getting up to shenanigans. But yeah, it's certainly possible to do a cheaper deal there. But what does it look like for Ukraine? Because this is what we discussed conscription before, Dave, and there's some movement in that area. What's been happening in Ukraine's effort at conscripting more and more people into its war efforts. But at some point, you're going to
less and less enthusiasm.
Yeah, you're going to end up with grandmas and schoolgirls, and that's all that's going to be left. And then you don't have a country then, right? So at what point does Ukraine say, that's it, we have nothing more to put into the war machine? When does that point arrive?
Then you have the worst of all possible worlds, what people have tried to avoid since February 24th of 2022, and that's the complete takeover of Ukraine by Russia. And now you have, the equivalent of Belarus, or if not more horrible in that it's actually annexed as part of Russia.
So what does the rest of the world do then regarding Ukraine? There's nobody left to fight the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's not part of NATO. There's no Article 5, all for one, one for all involved there. But Russia ends up annexing, let's not say all of Ukraine, but a huge chunk of Ukraine. And then what happens? What does the rest of the world do? Like, are they in any position? Are America and European allies in this? Are they in a position to do anything at all, or just to accept that you fought and you lost?
I think that the tripwire would be the NATO nations, which now, if Ukraine fell, now they are up against the wall. They're against the NATO wall.
Right.
And to go any further would bring the full weight of NATO against them, which I don't think Russia really wants to have.
No, I get that, but let's say they get all the way up to Kiev, and they say, right, this is now Russian territory. That what remains, Kiev and west, that's the remainder of Ukraine. What happens? In your opinion, does Europe just have to accept it? Does America just have to accept it? And that would be the new borders?
Yeah, have to may not be the right verb. Will they?
Yes.
Will they accept it? I'm of the opinion that they will not. That they will implement every non-lethal means to bring Russia to its knees, and they can. They haven't, because they had no leadership from the United States that would prompt them to do that. But I was very interested in what the president of the EU had to say, and it was clear that she's of a mind to implement every possible sanction against Russia should Russia not want to do the peace negotiation.
And what about the end game for Vladimir Putin? Let's say he accepts a final deal. What does he do from there on in? Does he wait out till his retirement? Or I guess he's the kind of guy who wants to go out, sat in the Kremlin at the ripe old age of 99. In his ultimate plan. But what does he do from there? If a peace deal is achieved and he's made gains for Russia, what does his future actions look like? What do his future actions look like?
I think it's that he'll continue with his basic plan, and perhaps Georgia falls completely next, because he's got a foothold there with the government, which is pro-Russian, and he'll just take that. He'll start. I'm not of the opinion that he's got the wherewithal to take on the Baltics. They have begun developing a set of defenses that are pretty formidable, and so I think that it would be just picking off the low-hanging fruit, little by little, and as each domino falls, to use a Cold War expression, that he gains more in terms of what he wants. But there's a cost to all of that, and Russia is already a pariah in the world in terms of the West, and again, the economic pressures that could be brought to bear would perhaps dissuade him from such an action.
And finally, Dave, what does it look like for President Trump if a peace deal is reached, and what does it look like if it isn't? Just very quickly to finish up.
Well, I think if a peace deal is reached, unlike what the media might suggest, I think Trump will say, good, excellent, move on to the next thing. And that would be Israel and Gaza, Iran. And so he would be looking for the next thing. If it's not reached, I think he will do what he said, apply the secondary tariffs, apply the enhanced sanctions, and just wait to see what happens, because he's got nothing to lose, right? I mean, just put him up.
That is the reality. People just don't seem to realize that this is not President Trump's war. It didn't start under his watch. And as Putin said, if he had been president, probably wouldn't have gone in the first place. Dave Patterson, I really appreciate all your insight on this. Thanks ever so much for being here.
Happy to be with you, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides, and I'd like to thank our guest today, Mr. Dave Patterson, and of course, thank you, the listeners, for tuning in each and every week. Please do remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse campaigns, candidates, nor legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.